I really liked the existing version of the Kia Sorento, and this updated one, well, it does a few things better, but a few things a little bit worse than the previous model. Stay tuned and I'll tell you all about it in this review. And if you've already liked and subscribed, thanks very much. If you haven't, please do, and ring the bell to keep up to date with all of my reviews. Let's get to it. It wouldn't be an updated model if the prices hadn't gone up, and that's the case here. You're looking at between $3,000 and $3,500 increases across the entire board for this updated version of the Sorento, and that's despite the fact that it has carryover engines. So you've still got the choice of the petrol V6 or the 4-cylinder turbo diesel. There's a $3,000 difference between those two as well, and I won't be covering the hybrid or the plug-in hybrid versions of this car in this review. I might later on if they both make it back to Australia. Kia Australia has been a little bit shy about whether the plug-in hybrid would come back or not, but we'll wait and see. And look, on the outside, the updated version of the Sorento does look a fair bit more like the EV9 electric SUV that sits above it. And look, to me, I don't necessarily think it looks better, but it does look different. It's got different headlights, a different grille, different tail lights, different wheel designs. And on the inside, you get a few different things as well. A new rotary dial gear selector and a bigger 12.3-inch touchscreen media system too. So look, you are getting some value and you're getting a bit of extra safety tech as well. I'll tell you about that later on. But first, let's take a look at this model lineup. The entry-level model is called the S, and it now starts at more than $50,000 for the petrol one, a few grand more for the diesel all-wheel drive, as I mentioned. Now, the prices that I'm going to be showing you in this review are all national drive-away prices according to Kia at the time of publishing, which is January 2024. So look, it comes pretty well equipped. It still gets the 17-inch alloy wheels with those chubby tires, which I really like. LED lights on the front of the car as well as LED daytime running lights. Halogen tail lights though. On the inside you get cloth trim, manual seat adjustment, and a fake leather trimmed steering wheel, a digital instrument cluster, but you still get that 12.3-inch touchscreen with wired and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, digital radio. Keep in mind though that you've got manual air conditioning, and you've only got air conditioning vents for the 2 front rows. This is still a 7-seater with the base model S having no air vents in the back row. So might rule it out for you if you're considering it for your family and you're going to use those back seats all the time. Up from there is the Sport model. You can tell it from the outside because it gets different looking wheels. It's also got rear tinted windows, and on the inside you get a few extra features like sat nav and 3rd row vents and a fan controller in the 3rd row as well. So it might be a better fit for your family. I think it's the best upgrade that you could make if you were considering a lower spec version of this car. Up from there is the Sport Plus grade, and you can tell it from the outside by the fact that it comes with 19-inch alloy wheels, combination LED taillights, and it's also got heated side mirrors. Not that you can tell from looking at them, but on the inside you get leather seat trim, which is very family friendly, and you also get 2nd and 3rd row USB charging ports, which you probably should get across the entire range, honestly. The Sport Plus grade also gets a 12-speaker Bose stereo. You've got heated front seats and a heated steering wheel and electric driver's seat adjustment too. And then there's this one here, which is the GT line, the flagship model in the lineup with 20-inch wheels. It gets different headlights. They're a projector LED light, and they are really, really good. And then you've got on the inside a big panoramic sunroof. I guess that's the outside as well. And you've also got a few extra features inside, such as ambient lighting, a head-up display, a camera rear view mirror system, wireless charger. There's also a passenger talk function, so that means that you can talk to those in the back row without having to actually physically raise your voice, which is pretty handy stuff. And you've also got quilted Napa leather interior trim, which looks fantastic. And the front seats are also cooled, and the outboard 2nd row seats are heated as well. So this feels and looks pretty much like a luxury SUV, but not necessarily with a luxury SUV price tag. So what else could you consider if you're looking at the Kia Sorento? Okay, you've got a bunch of options. If you are looking at this kind of money for this type of car, a 7-seat SUV from $50,000 to $70,000, you've got choices galore. But I'm going to tell you my 3 picks that I reckon you should check out. If you're not sold on the Sorento, I reckon you should look at the Ford Everest. Firstly, I know it's a 4x4, it's a serious ute-based SUV, but it's also very family friendly. It has 3.5-ton towing in case you need that. It's also got a choice of 2 different engines, a V6 diesel or a 2-litre turbo diesel, and both of them are great, and it's got 4-wheel drive, proper 4-wheel drive. It can go properly off-road. So it could be better than this if that's the kind of thing that you're into. But if it's not, then maybe you should also check out the Hyundai Palisade, because while it shares the same sort of powertrains and has some annoying features that this car has too, it is a very big and very practical family SUV. It's got a choice of 7 or 8 seats and a few different options available as well, but it is at the higher end of the price range compared to the Kia Sorento. And so is the Mazda CX-90, but if you want, you can get a more affordable take on that theme, and it still comes with a 6-cylinder petrol or diesel engine. It's a fantastic engine. It's a very practical and very large SUV, so it could be a good choice for you and your family. But tell me which one of those you would pick in the comments section below, or something completely different. Personally, I'd be waiting for the new generation Hyundai Santa Fe, because I think it could be a game changer. Stay tuned for that review. The Sorento is about 4.8 meters long, which isn't big for a 7-seat SUV. In fact, some of its rivals are more than 5 meters long. Tell me what you think about the restyle of this SUV. There are some different elements to it. The tail lights are now joined at the top. Before they were individual tail lights, bit more like a Mustang, but now I reckon it still looks pretty tidy. This color's fantastic as well, and I just want to show you up here on this GT line grade, you'll see there's a little camera there. Now that camera is your digital rear view mirror camera, and you get that in the GT line spec. It means that you won't have to deal with looking through all those passengers and seeing, well, not being able to see through all those passengers' heads or the headrests when they're up. So pretty handy tech. All right, let's check out this boot space and see if it's big enough. So you've got an electric tailgate in this spec, and it also has smart opening. So you don't even need to do the kick under the tailgate thing for it to open. Just walk up with the keys in your pocket and it'll unlock for you. That's very handy and very, very family friendly. Now, boot space is pretty family friendly in this SUV as well. Here you'll see a fair amount of space. You'll see the number on your screen now. That will allow you to fit a bunch of school bags or an upright pram or a few shopping bags. So it is definitely spacious enough and bigger than some other 3-row SUVs in this segment. Now, when you fold these seats down, you do get a lot more space. Just keep in mind though that if you pull these and release them, sometimes they can run away from you. Now, 5-seat layout, definitely going to be family friendly enough for a lot of people's needs. And if you're going to use these as bonus seats only, then yep, that's going to work for you, I reckon. Underneath here, you'll find your cargo blind. That's a handy spot to store it rather than lose it in the shed. You've also got a jack, and every version comes with a full-size spare wheel under the body of the car. Very practical. This one is the GT line, and wow, it does leave quite an impression. I have to say, it looks very upmarket in here. And while there are some things that maybe aren't as upmarket, you've got some pretty hard plasticky bits here and there, the material finishes are mostly very good. There's a soft padded section on top of the dashboard for those who fancy soft padded dashboards. You've also got nice soft elbow pads as well, and it just looks really classy. The way that this vent sort of goes from right at the edge all the way across to the other side, and then you've got the carryover, I guess I'd call them fish scale elements on the doors as well. It just all looks very tidy. And the twin 12.3-inch display screens, they look fantastic. Obviously, one is a display for the driver. It's got all your crucial driver information shown up there, trip computer, and it'll also show up your blind spot view monitor if you are buying this top spec version. And then there's this 12.3-inch touchscreen media system, which takes care of all the stuff that you need to worry about and think about, I guess. So you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you've got sat nav in this spec, and you've got a bunch of really quick and easy menus that don't take that much learning, honestly, and I like the way that the icons are designed. They are kind of funky looking. Now, one thing that you will need to learn a little bit more about is the safety systems. I'll tell you about that in the driving section. You have to do stuff through the screen for that. But thankfully down below, you've still got very handy controls. So this little section here can either be your climate control panel, or if you hit this little button here, that can be your media, touchscreen, sat nav, fast button section. So it's configurable, and that's kind of cool. I like that. And I love the fact that it's still not necessarily a physical button, but it is away from that part of the screen, at least. You do get used to it very quickly. I've lived with this layout in a Kia Sportage as well, and I found it to be really, really nice to live with. Now, you've also got a couple of buttons down here, trigger switches, I guess you'd call them, for your heated and cooled front seats. So they are pretty easy to get used to as well. And there's the new rotary dial gear selector. I usually don't like rotary dials, but I like this one because it's got stoppers at the edges, and it'll even vibrate to tell you that you've gone into gear, which is really nice. Park button is on top too. There's also an electric park brake lever here, and you've got a few different buttons here too. So that's where your heated steering wheel button is if you buy this GT line version. You've also got drive mode and terrain mode selection twirlies here. So if you want to change it to terrain mode, you can put it into snow, sand or mud, or drive modes. You've got sport, eco, normal and smart. I've been driving in smart because I'm a smart guy. You've got cup holders between the seats. There's a little cubby here to put your keys, wireless phone charger in this spec, and it's a pretty big storage cubby down there. A couple of USB ports, decent sized center console bin with a little tray in there as well, bottle holders in the doors, and this big panoramic sunroof, which looks fantastic. Oh, also up here, you've got your sunroof controls. You've also got an SOS button. It's part of the new Kia Connect telematics system. So if you are in an accident and you need to call emergency services, you can hit that right there. Or if it detects that you've been in an accident and the airbags deploy, it'll call them for you, which is kind of neat. Now, before we jump in the second row, I just want to show you the front passenger seat in this spec has the electric adjusty, tilty, slidey buttons here, so you can make more room for whoever sits behind if you need to. Probably a nice thing to know if you do plan to drive this car as an Uber vehicle or a hire car, or if you've just got really tall teens. I'm not that tall, but hey, I'm going to show you the second row space now. I've left the driver's seat to my position at 182 centimeters or 6 foot, and as you can see, I've got plenty of room, lots of foot room, lots of knee room, plenty of headroom. Well, anyone who's taller than 6 foot might find it a little bit cramped in terms of headroom, especially with this big panoramic glass roof. But if you need more space for those in the third row, you can slide the seat forward, and it slides forward in a 60-40 fashion, or maybe it's more like 70-30, but hey, you can tailor it to sort of suit different needs depending on if you've got people in the third row or not. I'll jump in there to show you what it's like in a sec. I also want to call out the fact that the bigger portion is on the curbside, which means that, you know, I prefer to have my daughter's seat on the curbside because it's easier and safer to get your child in and out. And if you're going to use the third row space all the time, that might be a little bit annoying because you might have to hold a kid's hand to put them in on this side all the time because it's the smaller one, the easier one to fold. So just keep that in mind, I reckon. You've got vents here as you would expect, so directional air vents. You've got mat pockets on the seat backs. They're like double layer. You've got a mesh section and a fabric section and hard kick plates so your kids can go to town kicking the seat backs. You've also got USB-C ports here as well. There's a fold down armrest here with cup holders too. There's bottle holders in the doors, soft elbow pads again, and this grade also gets those great sunshades, which I really appreciate, and your kids will too. All right, let's check out the third row space. I will just show you though that this side does come with a fold and slide function. It does allow you a decent amount of space in there, but let me show you the other side as well. Same sort of fold mechanism. Once you're back here, the headroom, well, it's the most noticeable issue because, well, anyone taller than about 170 centimeters is probably going to be brushing the ceiling a little bit. There's a lovely lining in this top spec model, and when you slide the seat back, to a position where I would probably be comfortable sitting ahead, Yeah, knees are hard up against the seat in front. So look, as a 5+2 seater or a bonus row, it will be fine. If you've got younger kids or smaller kids, it might be fine as well. And just keep in mind that you've got ISOFIX points in the window seats in the second row, 3 top tether points, and in the back you've also got ISOFIX points on both seats and top tethers as well. So you could potentially fit 5 child seats in this car if you want to, or if you dare to. It would be a bit of a hassle. Honestly, if I was going to be trying to fit 5 child seats to a Kia, it would be a Carnival, because it's a far more family-friendly option than this in terms of just transporting people, getting people into the back. Now, when it comes to backseat amenities, this top spec version does have vents. It's got USB-C ports and the fan controller on this side as well. The view out isn't too bad, so I reckon that it does tick the box to a degree. Just keep in mind though that the Kia Sorento's third row space is not covered by airbags, so that might rule it out for you. As I mentioned earlier on, I won't be covering off the hybrid or plug-in hybrid versions of this car, if they both still come, because, well, they're not here yet. So we're just going to talk about the petrol and diesel options. First, the petrol. It's a 3.5 litre V6, has pretty good power and torque outputs for a big 7-seater like this, and it comes as standard with an 8-speed automatic transmission, but it's front-wheel drive only, and you can squeal those front tyres pretty easily when you put your foot down, and it needs revs as well. Might be fine if you just live urban and you just do the school drop-off or something like that, but if you are going to experience wet weather a lot, or if you go camping, you might find the shortcomings of that powertrain pretty easily, I would say. That leaves this one here, which is the 2.2 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder. It's my pick by a long stretch, and it comes as standard with an 8-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. So it's a different kind of auto. I'll tell you about how it drives shortly. And it's got all-wheel drive with a few different drive modes for different terrains as well. So it's definitely the one to pick if you plan to go camping or go to the snow. And I reckon that it is a really, really good powertrain fit for this application. Now, when it comes to towing, you'll see the figures on your screen now for the braked towing capacity and the unbraked capacity as well. That's not too bad. It's not necessarily setting any benchmarks. If you need bigger than that, if you've got a big trailer, caravan or boat, you're gonna have to tow with something a bit more hardcore than this. Now, we're about to go for a drive, but before we do, there's one thing that I've done every single time I've driven this car, because the first time I drove it and didn't do it, it really, really, really annoyed me. It's turn off the speed sign recognition system. That's new for this 2024 updated version of the Kia Sorento, and honestly, I wish they'd left it off the list because it's really annoying. So in this car, you can set it up as a favorite, so hit the star button, go down here to speed limit, and then I'm gonna change it from speed limit warning to speed limit information. You have to do that every single time you drive this car if you get annoyed by the fact that it will constantly beep to tell you that your speed limit has changed. It's got a little camera that reads the signs around you and comes up on the screen and tells you whether the speed sign has changed. Technology's getting in the way of enjoying driving. I'm telling you that, people. All right, let's go for a drive, because otherwise this is an enjoyable car to live with, because I think the 2.2 litre diesel engine in this SUV is fantastic. It's the perfect fit for this type of car, although the 8-speed dual clutch automatic transmission does take a little bit of getting used to, because dual clutch automatics tend to behave differently to regular automatics. What that means is that there is a little bit of hesitation or lag when you're pulling away from a standstill, or if you're doing parking maneuvers or something like that, especially if you're going between drive, reverse and drive, reverse. It feels like it's riding the clutch, which is normal, I guess, for this transmission, but it doesn't necessarily make you feel like you're doing any favors to the longevity of this car. Now, dual clutch autos, they're not for everyone. If you are going to test drive a Sorento, make sure you go and do some parking moves and see if you can live with it. Otherwise though, it's pretty good. You don't necessarily have to deal with too much lag from a standstill. If you just put your foot down, it will get away from a standing start pretty well. I will also add though that there is no engine start stop technology for this car. So it will just sit there and idle, and it's not the most lovely idle. It is a diesel engine after all, so it can be a little bit shaky and rattly while you're just sitting there waiting for the lights to turn green, as we're about to do right here. So just put brake all the way on, and yeah, the engine doesn't cut out like some other cars, just a bit vibey. Anyway, it's not the end of the world, and it is still a pretty refined diesel engine. It's definitely got enough oomph for this kind of application. And look, I've driven this generation of Sorento, the pre-facelift version, with 7 people on board, and it was fine. Having driven the V6 petrol model in the past, like I said in the engine section, it can feel like it's overwhelming the front tires because it's got a lot of power and you really have to rev that engine to get the power down to the ground. So if you know that you're going to encounter a lot of wet weather, the roads will feel like you're ice skating in some situations. Obviously, it's got traction control and stability control to try and help you out of that sort of situation. But even so, you can spin the front tires a little bit easier than you can in some other SUVs, and particularly if you choose the diesel all-wheel drive, because you've got inherently more traction available to you. Look, the steering is good. It does have a decent amount of directness, and you know, it feels accurate when you try and change direction, but also the ride. I will say that this GT line version with those 20-inch wheels, it does pick up on a lot of the bumps and lumps in the road surface. It feels very stiff and it sort of feels like you aren't actually getting that much cushiness to the ride. It's sort of constantly doing up and down sort of nose and tail movements. So it's not necessarily the most luxurious ride, but I think it rides pretty well. Certainly a little bit more comfortable than some of the other SUVs in this segment, especially if you're looking at one of those ute-based SUVs. Otherwise, look, city driving, urban driving, country driving, it seems to be a pretty nice thing to live with. On your screen now, you'll see the official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for the petrol versions of this car. And look, you won't achieve it unless you're doing long freeway drives with one person on board. I don't think you're going to see that sort of number. If you're just going to run around town and you're going to fill up the seats, you're going to see a much higher figure. The petrol versions aren't very efficient in my experience. I've driven a few of them in the past and seen something along the lines of 11 or 12 litres per 100 Ks. It's not a deal breaker, but it's certainly not as efficient as it could be. The diesel is far more efficient. On your screen, you'll see the official number for it. And look, in real world driving, you might not necessarily see that low a figure, but on screen, you'll see what I've seen across a mix of driving on this test drive, which isn't my usual drive. I haven't been living with this car. I've just been doing a bit of stuff outside of Melbourne to give you an idea of whether it's the right car for you. And for me, the diesel would be the right car. The Sorento achieved the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating in 2020 and continues on with that rating for this facelifted version. It does come with a really decent array of standard safety technology, including autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian, cyclist and junction detection. There's also lane keeping assistance, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, safe exit alert to stop you from opening your door into oncoming traffic. And you've also got front and rear parking sensors and a reversing camera as standard. Now, in the higher grade models, you also get a thing called Highway Assistant. I think that's what it's called. It will basically help you steer and do adaptive cruise at higher speeds on the freeway or whatever, and even do the braking and accelerating thing for you, as you would expect. All cars in this range do come with adaptive cruise control, but that one's just a bit more advanced. And if you buy the top spec version, this one here, the GT line, you get a few extra safety features which you might really appreciate, including a blind spot view monitor system, and as well as that, a surround view camera system, which I think should be offered on a few different grades because, I mean, not everyone has 70 grand to spend on a new SUV, do they? You probably already know Kia offers a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is one of the best warranties on the market. There's also a 7-year cap price servicing plan for these models. Now, there is a difference between maintaining the petrol versions, which are a little bit cheaper. You'll see the average over the 7-year period. And now I'll show you the diesel average price over that 7-year period. Yeah, so there's a bit of difference when it comes to the maintenance costs, but keep in mind that your intervals are 12 months and 15,000 Ks no matter which version you pick, and you also get up to 8 years of roadside assistance included as well. Nice. I reckon I could probably live with the fact that it's got that annoying safety technology that you have to turn off every single time you drive the car, because in other ways, the Kia Sorento is excellent. I think it stacks up really well from a family perspective, especially if you're going to use it as a 5-seater with a big boot. That would be what I would be doing because I don't have that many kids. So I think it stacks up really well. The diesel all-wheel drive is definitely the pick, and I reckon that the GT line stands out, although a Sport Plus could be a really good choice. But tell me which one you would pick in the comments section below, or if you couldn't live with that safety tech, I'd also love to hear your comments on that. And if you've already liked and subscribed, thanks a lot. If you haven't, please do, it helps a lot. And I'll see you in the next one.